Welcome back to Superstring. My name is Mr. Stark. Today I will show you a parody, dream film from 2015, named The Brand New Testament. Spoilers ahead. Look out and fare thee well. Many individuals accept God exists, yet what they cannot deny is that he lives in a loft in Brussels with his wife and his girlie, who he doesn't treat well overall. Indeed, even before the production of the world, God was at that point exhausted, so he made Brussels and filled it with creatures, yet it didn't work. Creatures did nothing fascinating. So then he made the first man in quite a while picture, who meandered around the city until he met the primary lady and got going with her to kick human progress off. These days, he lives with him, however she isn't permitted to head outside, she's been caught in that loft for a long time. There's no chance in or out, she isn't permitted into God's office, and it's illegal to watch everything except sports on television. God's wife is delicate in the head and never gripes about anything. She goes through her days weaving blossoms and taking a gander at her baseball card assortment, which comprises of 18 cards. She likewise continues to put a fourth plate on the table when they eat on the grounds that she trusts their child will return, in spite of the fact that God doesn't figure he will. He can do similar deceives her sibling did, yet God generally reproves her for it, presumably in light of the fact that he's desirous since he can't do them as well. God's ability to control humankind is in a PC in his office. He's a hopeless man who has never cherished his better half or has at any point had the option to do anything with his hands. So to occupy himself from a horrible life, he's made humankind as toys he could watch endure and battle. By causing loads of disasters, he offers a ton of hopelessness and a little joy to give individuals misleading expectation. Throughout recent years, he's been compassing laws of universal pain in the back, similar to bread continuously falling with the jam side down, and the line you're not on will constantly move quicker. One evening, God inadvertently leaves the workplace entryway open, so he sneaks inside and investigates the PC, getting very stunned of all the savagery her dad has caused. Later at supper, she calls him out for it, which makes him incensed and inspires him to whip her with his belt. Following quite a while of both enthusiastic and actual maltreatment, that is the day he at last chooses to help mankind, however not without causing God to experience first. So the following day, in the wake of preparing her sack, she goes to the puppet in her room that addresses her sibling JC. Calling out to him is enough for him to awaken, so she asks him for guidance on the best way to continue. JC advises her to get a few messengers, yet he attempted 12, similar to a hockey group, and it got untidy. So all things being equal she ought to get 6, so among her and his messengers they get 18, their mom's number 1 number since it's a ball club. Picking messengers is simply an issue of her getting an inclination, so she can pick 6 individuals from God's records and afterward basically dazzle them with a little wonder. She ought to likewise get a brand New Testament compassed, however since he doesn't need individuals discussing her, JC advises her to make it about the actual witnesses. He likewise reminds her God isn't anything without his PC. At long last, to get away, she can utilize the clothes washer JC has hacked. Then he gets her arrangement moving. She exploits God nodding off on the lounge chair subsequent to drinking an excessive amount to take his key and get into his office. There, she takes 6 arbitrary mankind cards from his file organizer prior to utilizing the PC to send an instant message to each individual in the world, letting them know the date of their demise. Subsequently, she locks the PC, expresses farewell to JC, and goes to the clothes washer, moving inside to observe an extremely lengthy passage that will take her outside. As she slithers through the passage, the world responds to the dates in various ways. The news is now examining on the off chance that it's genuine or not, however they can't deny there have been such a large number of incidents of individuals passing on time as of now. A lady that Maine has 2 minutes to leave starts dealing with each conceivable danger in her condo, yet winds up with a cabinet falling on top of her. A janitorial specialist becomes well known for being the longest-lived man, having 102 years left to live. A youngster begins doing risky things deliberately, such as leaping off a window, since he realizes it won't kill him. A medical attendant blows up on the grounds that she'll live not exactly the older man she's been dealing with this time. Many individuals don't appear at work any longer, and wars have been deserted. A mother that has way less time than her sluggish child doesn't believe him should be distant from everyone else and attempts to kill him with a cushion, however he doesn't bite the dust since it isn't his time yet. Individuals in informal organizations are recording themselves doing that thing they've for a long time needed to do and never tried to. Back at the condo, God awakens and figures out what happened in light of the fact that even the game's channel is supplanting the typical programming with extraordinary newsflashes about this. Getting incensed when he understands he's feeling the loss of his key and E has locked his office, he snatches a hatchet and annihilates the entryway, just to figure out he can't utilize the PC any longer. Be that as it may, he can smell E's fragrance, so he begins searching for her around the house, requesting for her to reboot his PC and in any event, obliterating her room entryway with his hatchet as well, which permits him to follow her aroma to the clothes washer. Talking about the passage, E at last arrives at its end, which is inside one more clothes washer at a laundromat. When she leaves the structure, she is flabbergasted by everything she sees and hears on the grounds that it's her first time outside. It begins coming down and she adores its sensation. She additionally partakes in the flavor of a burger she finds in the rubbish, in spite of the fact that it makes her hurl. A vagrant named Victor observes her vomiting and tells her it was the fish burger that caused this is on the grounds that they make them out of whales. He inquires as to whether he can compose and when he says okay, she allocates him as her scribe and requests that he take more time to the addresses on the messenger's records, yet he will not reach out. This doesn't prevent E from chazzing after him attempting to persuade him, and when she in the long run nods off, he winds up conveying her, which makes E wish he had been her father. E makes sense of for Victor some stuff like the reality Earth is paradise, which he doesn't accept in light of the fact that that should come in the afterlife. In any case, E lets him know that is not the situation, there's nothing in the afterlife. In the interim, God concludes he'll need to pass on the loft to track down E. Whenever his wife lets him know it could be perilous for him since he never was out there, he gets irate and begins hollering at her, communicating his dissatisfaction over having lost his control of mankind. They used to act on the grounds that their future was questionable, however presently they have no dread and can decide to do anything they desire with their lives. Assuming she accumulates adherents like JC, she could wind up let everybody know how not to be hopeless, and he can't permit that. The wife keeps quiet in her dread, so subsequent to shouting at her for being inept, God enters the passage in the clothes washer. Victor takes more time to see her first witness, Orally, who in the wake of learning she has 11 years left to carry on with, changed nothing about her life and went on to the surprise of no one. Orally lives alone, which is odd for a lady so lovely most men need her, and most ladies are desirous of her. However, she lives in a consistent miserable state since when she was a young lady, her arm was ripped off by a tram vehicle, so presently she wears a prosthetic. He gets some information about herself so Victor can record it for the brand New Testament, so Orally tells her a tale of when she was drawn nearer by a homeless person. She had figured he would loot her or request cash, however all things being equal, he basically said, life resembles a skating arena, and many individuals fall. Orally cries as she lets them know how that little bit of reasoning played on repeat in her mind, and she recalls that at each time she checks out at herself in the mirror. Subsequent to getting some information about her age and her mom's, he assembles Oraly's tears in a little container since she can't cry. What she can do is hear individuals' music, so she sets her ear against Orally and tells her hers is Handel, a Baroque writer, and guarantees her to send her a decent dream around evening time. Sometime thereafter, Orally fantasies about observing her lost hand moving on her kitchen table and getting to contact it once more. While strolling towards their next area, he inquires as to whether he realizes his passing date, yet he doesn't have a telephone. Their subsequent messenger, Jean-Claude, isn't home. At the point when he was youthful, he had a traveler soul, however at that point reality hit him, and he needed to attempt to make do, so he wound up having an exhausting office work at a major enterprise and stalling out in a discouraging daily schedule without a family. In the wake of learning he has 12 years left to leave, he tossed his telephone and folder case in the junk, then, at that point, sat on a seat and chose to at no point ever move in the future. That is the place where he and Victor track down him, and subsequent to talking about the distinctions among fish and birds and individuals passing on from advanced age, he lets him know his music is Rameau, another Baroque artist. Since she can converse with creatures, she lets him know that the bird he's been watching likes him, and when he inquires as to why it never leaves the recreation area, the bird says it could get some information about him. This incredibly stuns him, so Jean-Claude at last gets up and starts chazzing after the bird. Meanwhile, God at long last arrives at the laundromat, however just figures out how to escape the machine after it washes him. There's an old woman there that gets terrified when she sees him and tosses pepper splash at his face, so he runs outside, where he's out of nowhere hit by the downpour. Whenever he attempts to snatch a burger from the garbage bin, a gathering of criminals stops him, saying that is not his to gobble and pummeling him for it. God winds up in the medical clinic, where he drives away and affronts the specialist for contacting his injuries and not giving him morphine. Then he takes a child's cut of bread with jam, so the mother hits him with her umbrella for it. The third witness on the rundown is Mark, who has 83 days left to live and is dependent on grown-up amusement. He doesn't contemplate his folks frequently, and when he does, he just recollects the parade they used to live in. His most significant cherished memory is a wonderful young lady that he saw on the ocean front and wouldn't leave his see any problems for quite some time a while later. Then different young ladies began showing up in his life and he got a pound on every one of them, however he never was fruitful in getting any dates. He had a go at figuring out how to converse with ladies by observing a few internet-based recordings, however he just put on a show of being a drag. Whenever he found out about his passing date, he chose to take out the entirety of his cash from the bank and use it on ladies. First, he paid for an escort, which provided him with the best insight of his life, and presently he's going through consistently visiting grown-up shows until he hits bottom financially. In the wake of asking about his family as well and pondering for what reason things aren't free, he lets him know his music is Purcell, likewise a Baroque performer. She likewise lets him know he has a decent voice and he ought to bring in cash with it, so he winds up functioning as a voice entertainer for pornos. The entertainer working with him ends up being Xenia, the young lady from the ocean side. They track down an association while visiting about writing and return together to his loft, where they nod off clasping hands. Back at God's place, the wife discovers some harmony when she at last will switch off the television, yet she is stunned to see the essences of the new messengers are showing up on a duplicate of the Last Supper. In the interim, God enters a congregation that accomplishes noble cause work and winds up getting into a battle for certain vagabonds when he attempts to cut in line. The cleric removes him and gives him some food, while reminding him he ought to adore his neighbor as God mentioned. However, God lashes out, since he never said that. JC did on the grounds that he conflicted with his dad's contemptuous wishes. To demonstrate what his identity is, God tells the minister his name and starts bringing up every one of the awful things that occurred in his life, giggling and reminding him he was the reason. This drives the cleric mad and makes him fire pounding him as the sculpture of JC abruptly grins at them. The fourth missionary is Francois, who has a quarter century left to live and calls himself a professional killer. The day the passing dates went out, he purchased a rifle to fire individuals with. In the event that it wasn't their doled-out date, nothing would occur. Yet on the off chance that they died, it wouldn't be his issue since it was all pre-written. He's been fixated on death since he was a child. He cherished memorial services, in spite of the fact that he was rarely miserable or cried, and he adored killing bugs and his cousin's pets. He got hitched and had a child, and he felt his occupation in extra security held no significance. He and Victor tracked down him in the recreation area, and subsequent to requesting that in his explanation shoot individuals, she lets him know his music is Schubert, an old-style author. Then she requests that he shoot the lady that is going to cruise by, who ends up being Aurelie. The projectile stalls out in her prosthetic, however, since Francois and Victor have close to zero familiarity with it, they believe it's a wonder, thus Francois starts chasing after her. He will brush his hand against hers in the lift, not understanding it's phony, yet never considers addressing her. Whenever he takes a gander at himself in the mirror later, he attempts to deny he's enamored, however just makes him crush the mirror out of resentment. Subsequent to disregarding his family for the evening, Francois visits Aurelie once more, giving her a few blossoms with his number in the lift as he proclaims his adoration for her. Aurelie doesn't reply, however she brings the blossoms back home with her. As Jean-Claude keeps on pursuing his bird all over the planet, he visits the fifth witness, Martine, who has 5 years left. She used to be a heartfelt when she was youthful, however she wound up wedding an exhausting man that gave her a repetitive everyday practice and looked assuaged when he heard she would just live for 5 years of his 39. Subsequent to finding out about her passing date, she employed an escort, however the experience wasn't generally excellent and he wound up taking her cash from her handbag. He tells her music matches a bazaar, so they visit one, and there Martine will make an association with a gorilla, which is the most excellent thing that has at any point happened to her and makes her cry. Subsequent to telling her the gorilla says he loves her, he gathers her tears. Martine purchases the gorilla from the carnival expert and brings him back home, where he dozes on the lounge chair while Victor dozes outside. He really wants to see the moon prior to dozing to remind himself he isn't in prison for something he didn't do any longer. The gorilla is permitted to break things around the house and Martine winds up kissing him. In the interim, Aurélie calls Francois and welcomes him over. She shows him the projectile scar on the prosthetic, and when she takes it off, he kisses it, a motion that profoundly contacts her. The several winds up going through the night together. The following day, God attempts to get back to his condo, yet all the are impeded to wash machines. He starts looking for E once more and tracks down her close to the waterway, so he pursues her to inspire her to reboot his PC. E basically escapes by strolling on water, and Victor will do likewise by holding her hand. Whenever God attempts it in any case, he sinks. A gathering of men save him and take more time to chapel, where the minister makes them drop him on similar bedding as a lot of unlawful Uzbek migrants. Jean-Claude continues to follow his bird and its herd, and he starts moving his hands to coordinate the group's developments in a delightful dance. The last witness is Willie, who has 54 days left. He had generally been debilitated and even got a medical procedure once, so when he found out about his date, he chose to turn into a young lady. Subsequent to letting him know his music is Charles Trenet, a jazz artist, and giving him a fantasy about a singing fish, both of them start hanging out together, effectively making an association since they're a similar age. With the other messenger's assistance, he provides Willie with an incredible last 7-day stretch of life. It is during that week likewise that Aurélie advises Francois to quit killing, that Martine goes through the night with the gorilla and allows him to frighten her significant other off, that Marc and Xenia go through the night together appropriately interestingly, and that Jean-Claude arrives at the North Pole, where the group frames a bolt to direct him to a neighborhood lady. On the last day of the week, God is taken to Uzbekistan with different settlers, while he and the missionaries take more time to the ocean side so he can bite the dust adrift. In the interim, God's better half is glad to see the missionaries are at long last 18 like a ball club, and since it appears God won't be getting back home, she permits herself to be content. She puts on some music then, at that point, moves and sings to it while cleaning, in any event, thinking about going to God's office to vacuum the floor. To do as such, she turns off the PC so she can connect the vacuum cleaner, all things being equal. This causes Willie not to bite the dust when the opportunity arrives and God's plane to begin losing height, taking steps to crash around the ocean. In any case, at that point, the wife completes the process of cleaning and associates the PC once more, which reinstates. The wife sees a message on the screen requesting a secret key and composes 18, so then the PC invites her as the goddess. God's plane out of nowhere recovers elevation, and everybody loses the instant message with their life commencement just before the world starts going through genuine changes. Goddess utilizes the PC to make a more pleasant, more delightful reality, where the sky is loaded up with blossoms, individuals can stroll on the lower part of the sea, gravity is adaptable, and the ice covers quit softening, paying little heed to a worldwide temperature alteration. Presently the television just shows uplifting news consistently. Martine has a child with the gorilla, Victor turns into a famous creator by distributing the brand New Testament, he and Willie have their first kiss together, and Francois gets pregnant with Aurélie's child. In the interim, God is trapped in a Uzbek processing plant where he checks each clothes washer, expecting an exit plan. If you want watch more video, please check description box.